Today we're doing static malware analysis. We're going to talk about how to perform or how to conduct static malware analysis as part of two videos I'm going to release, one of which is the current one that we are talking about right now. The upcoming video will be about dynamic analysis, so you're going to have an overview of how to perform both the static and dynamic malware analysis. So previously, when we talked about defensive security, we mentioned that malware analysis is one option you can actually undertake, or you can actually choose if you want to get into defensive security. So in malware analysis, you might be stumbling upon malware samples under different contexts. So maybe you might be working in a SOC center. So both who are working in a SOC or security operations center might also perform malware analysis to write detections for malicious activity in their networks. You might also be performing malware analysis as part of an incident response team. So incident response teams also analyze malware to determine the impact of the malware, or the negative damage, or the damage that is incurred on the network. The reason for that is they want to actually produce a remediation, all right, and recover the environment as part of the incident response process. So also people who work in threat hunting as well. So if we work on threat hunting or threat intelligence, so why do these people also need to know how to perform malware analysis? Basically, in threat hunting, we want to look for indicators of compromise. So these people here, they look for something called the IOCs, or indicators of compromise. This include IP addresses, domains, hashes. So they add these indicators of compromise and they feed it to security tools. Who also work in malware analysis? Also malware analyst, right? Malware analyst, dedicated malware analysts. So dedicated malware analysts, these people, they might be working for security vendor like AV companies, or they might be working for research company, or they might be working in OS companies like Microsoft or Google or Apple. So these people, they are dedicated to malware analysis. They actually analyze samples from time to time, if not daily, to add detections to security products or antiviruses, or to explore what kind of vulnerabilities that the malware is exploiting in order to add features to the OSs, or might be producing research about recent malware outbreaks. So these people work, or these people actually, those are the people who work in malware analysis. Now, one type of malware analysis is the static malware analysis. So before we step into static malware analysis, there are certain considerations that you might be actually doing, or you might need to pay attention to before doing any sort of malware analysis, whether it's static or dynamic. We're going to talk about these in the procedure. So now let's start with malware analysis. So first is the definition of static malware analysis. So by definition, the static malware analysis is the process of analyzing and extracting the properties and attributes of a malware without opening it. So the main highlight in static malware analysis is that you don't open the file. Don't open the file, okay, by any means. So it's like someone trying to sneak peek from the door without someone seeing them, right? So you try to extract the properties and attributes of the file without opening it. Okay, so that's static malware analysis, and that's the main highlight. Now on to the procedure. So how to perform static malware analysis. So basically the procedure is one for both dynamic and static malware analysis. So the first thing is that we analyze the malware in a controlled environment. So we actually have a dedicated VM for analyzing malware, static or dynamic. So why do we choose dedicated VM? The reason for that, we don't want to mistakenly open or accidentally open the malware or the file. So what do? We dedicate a VM. Any VM should do fine with all the tools that you need. It could be a Windows VM, it could be a Linux VM, it could be a dedicated OS for malware analysis, such as the one that we will use today is called Remnux. This is a dedicated operating system based on Linux, equipped with all the tools that you need as a malware analyst. It was built for reverse engineering. Reverse engineering is also part of malware analysis, and an integral part actually. We're going to talk about this. Okay, so you need a dedicated VM. Also, what you need to do, zip the file. So if you have a malware sample, zip it, okay, and protect it with password plus password. So why do we do that? We don't want, again, to accidentally open the malware. So in case you accidentally open the file, you will just you will be asked about the password because the file has been zipped with the password. So you prevent yourself from getting into a disaster or catastrophe. So these are the considerations, the main considerations actually when performing malware analysis, and specifically static analysis. The last thing that I would like to mention is try to restrict, okay, if not cutting the internet access, restrict internet access on where? On the VM on which you're analyzing the malware. So here, try to cut the internet or restrict it. Why do we do that? The reason is most malware make contact with outside sources or CNC, command and control servers. The reason is they want to receive instructions on what to do on the machine, or they are designed to receive instructions from a central server. We call it the CNC. That's why when we restrict internet or we cut the internet access, what we do here actually, we are preventing the malware from communicating with its origins. Although this one is actually not that important in static malware analysis, it's more important when we do dynamic analysis. We will still be able to see the connection attempts the malware is issuing from our machine, but it won't be successful simply because there is no internet on the machine. Okay, now what are the objectives of static malware analysis? What is our aim when we conduct static? Why don't we just right off the bat jump to dynamic? So the objectives of the static malware analysis is that we extract certain attributes. These attributes include first the hash. So I want to extract the MD5, the SHA-256 hash of the malware. So why do you extract the hash? The hash is used actually to further deepen the research about the nature of the malware. There are certain online tools that with the hash of the malware you can predict or actually decide its behavior. That's why we extract the hash. The next thing we do is we extract the strings. So with extracting the strings, we can actually find information about the API calls the malware is making. So the API calls, for example, in Windows, are sometimes called imports. So the malware is trying to use certain features written or certain features set in Windows or other operating system in order to perform a specific function without the need to write the code from scratch. We call these API calls. So here the API calls, the malware is communicating with certain features or functions with the operating system. Sometimes finding these calls, API calls, or finding the functions that are called helps in determining the nature of the malware. We can find these sometimes, not always, of course, using the strings. So after the hash and strings, also we aim to extract something called the imports. So the imports, again, are the functions set in the operating system or available in the operating system to perform specific function. So the malware authors, instead of writing these from scratch, they would use something called the imports. They would make API calls to certain functions at the OS to perform specific thing. For example, let's say you can go to Microsoft documentation, by the way, and check out all of the functions available there. These functions actually help you. If you are writing a certain program, you can use these functions to perform specific objective without the need to write the code from scratch. So what's an example function? For example, we have the reg query value. So a malware or any other program, by the way, would actually try to import this function. So when we extract all the imports from a malware, we actually extract all of these functions, and by extracting all of these functions, we can draw an image or picture about the kind or the nature or the behavior and the nature of the malware. For example, registry query value. Here we actually know that the malware is trying to query registry, right, to find certain values or stuff from the registry, and equipped also with other imports and functions and the knowledge about these, we can also draw a certain limited picture of the nature of the malware. Also, you have other functions like URL download file or internet open function. These functions actually are very useful for you if you want to decide on the nature of the file. Now, other than the hash, the strings, the imports, also sometimes to determine the nature of the file. Additionally, one other thing is the file extension or the nature of the file. Yeah, extension, I'm going to call it. So an extension can be found by looking at the file, right? So for example, say we have payload.exe. Here we know that the extension is executable, so we determine the nature of the file just by looking at the extension. But sometimes malware authors or writers would actually mislead you by changing the extension. So the only way to finding the true nature of the file, you can just actually look at the file extension using the As a process of analyzing malwares, we're required to find the MD5 checksums, MD5 hashes of the malwares. So assuming that this is your system that you're using for malware analysis, or could be your sandbox, you can just use the samples right on your sandbox. It could be Windows, it could be Linux. In this case, it is Linux, Windows, and you see here we have the samples. So if you right click and click on properties, you have file hashes. The file hashes displays the MD5 hash checksum of the files. But how do we put the file hashes here? So basically, there's a tool called file hash tab. So hash tab. I guess it's the tool, right? This is the one. Algorithms, easy, native, products. Yes. So when you download this tool, all right, it will display the MD5 hash of the file when you click on properties. So you see the MD5 hash here. Now, what is the use of MD5 checksum of the files? So basically, if we go to virus total, right? So we have here file, URL, search. Okay. So let's take an example. This executable is claiming to be VLC, which is the video program, video player. Properties, file hash, copy the hash, and put it here. Now, if it is actually the real hash of the video player, it will be shown here. If it is not, it's going to be not recognized, which means that the file is a fraud, right? It's not actually VLC player. So search. This actually means that the program is VLC actually, right? Because as you can see here, the hash is not marked as malicious by most of the antivirus detections. Now, it doesn't mean that the file is not a virus or malware. It just means it was not detected. It means it's not on the database signatures of all of the antiviruses. Now, let's see this one, AWS. Properties, file hashes, copy. And let's run another search. Again, here we have, I've got nothing, community. Let's read through the comments. This is an executed program for the unofficial fallout for Pipeboy from Nexus Nodes. Here is the site. This file is 100% safe to use since nothing was found in all scans. And due to the fact that Nexus Nodes scans every file they upload to the site, no contacted hosts. This file is also being whitelisted by the National Institute of Standards and Technology. Another comment, full path. So most of the community comments saying that this file is safe, and the results of the scan corroborates what we found in the community, right? Nothing is marked as malicious, but again, it doesn't mean that the file is not malicious. It doesn't mean that you don't have to run your analysis on the file. It just means that the file has passed the first stage of your analysis, right? Okay. So part of the analysis after you compare the hashes is to see if the file, right, or if the binary or the application has payers in it. It means that the attackers have used payers or obfuscation techniques to hide the real signatures of the file. So there's a program called PEI identity. Let me check on PEID. So this program checks if the file right has payers. So drag and drop. See the payers here is Microsoft Visual C++ 6.0. So why does it mean that whenever you see a file has a payer, it means that the file is malicious? No, because sometimes you have software engineers or licensed programs. Licensed programs need to be protected from, from being stolen. The source code needs to be protected, so they use payers, right, to hide or prevent the file from being decompiled, to hide the source code. So hiding the source code using payers is not absolutely a bad indication that the file is malicious. It just means that the creator wants to protect the source code. It could be for malicious reasons, to hide the malicious purpose of the file, or it could be for benign reasons, for hiding the source code from those who try to crack the program to find the source code whatsoever. So that's the use of payers. But in the context of malware analysis, when we say payers, it means that this could be a malicious file. Assume that we don't have the PEID program, or you just don't have it, right?
We can't know if the file is really packed or not. You can just use the ID everywhere, and from the output or the display of the program, you can just find out if the program has packers or not. Let's see how. So we launch ID everywhere first. Yes. New. Let's drag and drop. You can't. New. Desktop. Tasks. 11. Open. No. Build the file. It's not opening here. Let's drag and drop. Okay. The imports segment seems to be destroyed. This may mean that the file was packed or otherwise modified in order to make it more difficult to analyze. If you want to see the imports, okay. So this is the simply code. Now, if you go to imports, you see we have very few number of imports. Very few number of imports is something out of the ordinary, and it means one thing. It means that the file you're analyzing or the file in question is packed, or there are packers used to obfuscate this file. Now, again, the use of packers is not actually a bad indication of malicious purpose, right? So always licensed programs, they use packers. So when you import licensed program here, expect to see a few number of imports. But that's how you know that there is a packer in question.
If we run now PE Studio, so let's open the file. Okay. So as you can see, we have the MD5, SH8, SH256. Now, obviously, guys, MD5 and SH1 are not secure anymore due to hash collisions or the possibility or probability of hash collisions. That's why to more securely produce a hash, security researchers and community members most often use SH256. Now, regardless of which one has been used, we can rely on any one of these guys' hashes to look up the malware in malware analysis website. For example, Malware Bazaar. So Malware Bazaar here, we can copy MD5 and we can go to browse. Yes, I am not a robot. And here we can type MD5 and we can uncover similar files that have the same hash. So we've got nothing. Let's make sure the syntax is correct. Okay, cool. Let's look with SHA1. Or as you can see, it's better to look up with SHA256. So SHA256 and we search if there are any binaries or malwares similar to this file. So I've got no data. Okay, so it means the malware has not uploaded or has not been uploaded to this site before. So to be able to use the hashes effectively to uncover the file, what we're going to do, we're going to use the imp hash. The imp hash can also be used to uncover the family of this file. So if there are files that have the same, or malwares that have the same imp hash, we're going to uncover the family of this file, despite the fact that it hasn't been uploaded, as you can see here. So let's put the syntax and see if there are imp hash here. So as you can see, we can look up with imp hash. It's good to know, guys, that important to analyze the MD5 or to analyze the hash of actually malware, one of the binary. You've got to run the MD5 in SHA1 or to analyze the SHA256 in Malware Bazaar or similar sites, or analyzing its headers. Look up the imp hash. And we use reveal PE3. If there are other files that are similar to PE Studio or have the same malware family. You can also use firestore at some time until all the checks are done. I suspect that the file has been uploaded. Let's give you a rundown on this too. So basically, as you can see, guys, we have multiple sections to look at. Among these are the functions that are imported from what? The libraries, which represent the DLS. These two sections are very important in uncovering the behavior. Means that the file has not been uploaded yet. Also, we got the strings, right? And here, indicators. This gives us a rundown of the possible indicators of compromise that the file might be using. And here we have virus filter, but there is an error, timeout. So we are interested in actually the functions and libraries. As you can see here, it gives you in the column blacklist if the actual library is among the libraries that is used by malwares. So it's blacklisted here. So this would give you an indication if the malware, if the binary is malware, or probably is malware, let me call it. So if you've got many number of blacklists here, as an example, this would raise suspicions. Functions is the same. You have, as you can see, you have blacklists. So this raises questions why the file, or why the binary is using these functions or is importing these functions. Indicators. As you can see here, so this indicates the file references strings. So we have 52, as you can see here, got 52 blacklisted strings. Let's take a look. This one. suspend a thread, found in the strings, global delete, also blacklisted. So this is very helpful, guys, in when analyzing the malware. If you have list of the blacklist, you can quickly give a judgment about the behavior of the file. So after the strings, we have also around 47 blacklisted functions. The file references file extensions the file references file extensions like a ransomware wiper. We have 16 counts. So if you go to references here, let's see, where are they? Strings. Maybe we have to look at the option headers, sections. I'm looking to find these references the file talked about. We have 16 count, and here we have one. The file references blacklist libraries. We have one library that's blacklisted, which we already uncovered, as you can see here. It is the remote procedure call. So take a look first at the indicators, and then try to find or try to investigate these indicators, starting with the strings, for example. As you can see, we have 52 blacklisted strings. Here we have 47 blacklisted functions, 16 references, one library blacklist, and 3 blacklisted functions. According to, again, the levels of these, the risk level of them. The file references debug symbols. As you can see, ACE money reminder. So by taking a look at all of these blacklisted references or blacklisted indicators, we can form a rough idea of whether the malware is the file is malware or not, without the need to open the file. Of course, for extensive analysis, we're going to need to perform both the static and dynamic. But for now, these are most of the techniques used in static analysis.
Put the comment, strings, and the file in question. String is not organized as general XML comment. Okay, we have to go to the path of the tool. So these are the strings and the text characters in the file. So we should look carefully through these characters whenever we analyze a file. As I said earlier, it may contain Bitcoin addresses, financial addresses, IP addresses, passwords. So we're required to find a URL I can't see URL here. Registry keys, paths. Oh, this one, practical malware analysis.com. Find this. Let's find with PE Explorer. So we can run PE Explorer here. Open file. Continue. If you go to the tools and disassembler, view the machine code, the assembly code, let's start now. Okay, search with something like, if you couldn't find anything with HTTP, you can just search with something like .com. Oh, you see, you can find it here. Practical malware analysis. You can find it with the disassembly code. It's better to use the disassembly code more than strings. We have 2 malicious PDF files, non-suspicious PDF and advert.pdf. We're required to analyze each one of them, okay, and find out what is hidden in these PDF files. Is it Python code? Is it JavaScript code? Is it executable code? Is it partial executable code? Whatever. So you're required to analyze a file. So put yourself in the analyst shoes now and analyze each file. So we will be using a tool called PPDF. So PPDF, which is a tool used for analyzing PDF files and finding the embedded codes in them. So let's launch the tool. Okay, so this is the help menu. You can just take a look at the help menu to familiarize yourself with the options. As you can see here, we specify the script file, we specify interactive mode. So we will be going over analyzing the first one, okay, with PPDF. Now, the first thing you have to do before opening the PDF file is finding out if it has a malicious or an embedded code. So how to do that? We issue PPDF and we specify the file name. In this case, it is not suspicious. So as you can see, we have the information about the PDF file, the file name, the MD5 checksum, SHA, SH256, and we talked about these checksums in the previous videos and how to verify that you have actually received the original file by just comparing the checksums with the original values. Now, to find out if there is an embedded code, we have to go down there, and we see here there are some details about the presence of a JavaScript code. So one JavaScript code, as you can see. Objects with JS code is one, suspicious elements, open action, JS, JavaScript. So there is JavaScript code inside this PDF file. So you have to analyze it before opening it. Okay, so how do we analyze a PDF file that contains a JavaScript code? We have to extract the JavaScript code. How to extract it? So first we have to create another PDF file, okay, like a copy of this one, and use extract JS function of JavaScript to extract the JavaScript code into the new PDF file, which is a copy of this one. So echo, say extract JS. Now let's say JS demo node suspicious. Okay, so what will this do? It will just put this content, okay, extract JS into JS demo node suspicious. So extract the JavaScript code, okay, to a new PDF file now, and then put the content right in a text file called extracted.js.txt. Okay. So now if we ls cat exjs, we see the text file contains the command which will extract the JavaScript code into a new PDF file. Now we have to go back to ppdf and specify ppdf using -s. If you go up, -s, specify the script file. The script file is the file that contains the JavaScript code. Now, the script file is this one, the text file, which contains the instruction. Now, once we specify the text file, it will execute this one. Okay. Now, specify the text file, which is extracted.js, right? And then we specify the original PDF file, which is, in our case, node suspicious. So let's see now what are the new files that have been created. ls. So we have the script file, and we have, you see, the new PDF file. Now the new PDF file, if we cat this new PDF file, it will show the script file, the JavaScript code. So JS demo instructions PDF. If we cat this, see, this is the JavaScript code. Virus. See what VirusTotal has to say about this. Although the file doesn't contain a harmful JavaScript, it's only a notification. But let's see if VirusTotal would notify us about the presence of JavaScript code or embedded code. Confirm. So far we have only one antivirus telling us that this code or this PDF file has suspicious, and it could be a suspicious PDF. Why? Because it contains JavaScript code. And as I said earlier, the JavaScript is not harmful. The file isn't malicious, but it does contain a JavaScript code, which means that if the antivirus is here, let's see. Okay, only one. So these antiviruses, one of two options. The first one is these antiviruses have scanned the PDF file and have determined that there is an embedded JavaScript code, but found that it is not harmful. That's why it hasn't shown any alert here, or they haven't scanned the JavaScript code at all. That's why they're showing undetected. It's one of these two options. Details, community. Let's see if they can. No community participation about this. Anyway, let's get back here. So that's how we analyze PDF files, right? And this is the alternative one, which contains the script. So we have analyzed now the PDF one, which contains an embedded JavaScript. Now we will analyze advert.pdf, see what kind of embedded code is there. So PDF advert.pdf. Let's see here. Seems like we have many elements. Suspicious elements, names, and we have also JavaScript code with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 suspicious elements. Okay, let's open the advert now. This document has embedded files. Click here to see them, or go to File, Embedded Files. So click here to see them. Okay. View. Open temp, not suspicious, PDF. So it has an embedded PDF file inside of it. Let's go to Files, Embedded Files. You will see the same file, which is here. Okay, so it's not a good idea to see the embedded files or finding out if the PDF file has an embedded code by just opening it, right? So we're opening it here just to visualize what's happening. Now, we should also use PPDF to find out the embedded code. Let's extract now the JavaScript code. So we use extract JS as illustrated earlier and create a new PDF file that contains the extracted script. So new demo, advert, in this case, exgs. So here put advert ls. Okay, so we have now a new PDF file, which is, this is the script code. Okay, now we extract the PDF, the JavaScript code, -s, and here specify the script code, the original file, which is advert. So the new PDF file that contains the script is this one. Let's cat this file, cat.js demo adverts. This is the script. This .export data object. So it seems like the file is trying to open another handle which saves an attachment. CNAME, not suspicious, nlaunch 0. So as we saw when we opened the file here, this one, it tries to save another PDF file. Okay, let's go with that. Let me first delete this one, which has the same name. Why are you opening this? Notes. Now let's open the malicious file one more time and click here. Close this one. Save the attachment here. Okay, close. Now open this one. Could open file, home, not suspicious, PDF. Okay, so as we saw here, the file advert, when you open it, it pops up, right, a prompt that's telling you to save another file, which is not suspicious, which we did actually save here. Now we will try to analyze this file alone. So P on my local machine, P PDF, not suspicious, ZSH. Seems like I don't have the tool on my machine. Unable to locate the package, so it's like you have to install this manually. Anyway, all right, let's now upload the file to VirusTotal. We will upload the original file, which is advert, okay, and then we will upload the not suspicious, which is the sub file or the attachment. So VirusTotal has found that you see here, it is malicious PDF file. Why do you think is this? As you can see, exploited PDF, dropper, Trojan, dropper. The dropper actually is the new PDF file, which is here, not suspicious. Now, if you analyze the not suspicious with VirusTotal, it should tell us exactly what it's doing. So choose file, not suspicious, open. Let's check it out. So it has been marked as malicious. Fine. Let's use now any run to analyze both files. And we have already seen that the file contains a JavaScript code. So you have to be aware of all PDF files that does or do contain embedded code, like JavaScript or executable files. And this one, the behavior of this file is very suspicious, actually. Because once you open the file, it is telling you to save another PDF file, which is really weird, right? It's not expected of a PDF file to warn you or alert you that you have to save another PDF file, right? So we have two Word files. Now, the first step of analyzing Word files, before opening the Word file, let's just take a look at what VirusTotal has to tell us about these two files. So we fire up the browser. Now I downloaded the files to my local machine. You can, and they are here. So I'm going to start with definitely a legit invoice. Open, confirm upload. As you can see here, most of the antivirus engines label the file as malicious. Why? Because it contains a dropper. So a dropper is, a piece of code that downloads another Trojan from another source. So they're saying that once you open the file, it will download another suspicious file or Trojan to your machine. Interestingly, 11 out of 62 have been able to detect this. Kaspersky, fortunate. But as you can see, Bitdefender and YARA, AVG, Komodo, McAfee, Malwarebytes, they label the file as safe, which is why, as you can see, by the way, this file is not encrypted. It contains the payload without any kind of encryption and encoding, which makes Word files or embedded macros-enabled Word files are dangerous. Even as you can see, although this file doesn't have any encryption in its payload, still few of the antiviruses have been able to mark it as suspicious or malicious. Now let's analyze the other file. Choose file, taxes, open. So taxes has been already analyzed by, as you can see, if you click on the community, here we have extruded layers such as embedded logic, semantic context, and metadata are available for review. Section. Okay, so here the taxes file has been labeled as malicious by 20 of the antivirus. So try like me. I can copy both of them. So this is how the file looks like when you open it. As you can see, there is a button saying enable content. Now, unless you click on this button, the file will not do anything malicious or cannot do anything malicious to your system. If you enable content, the macros will work. So don't enable the content unless you trust the file source. You go to view, macros, view macros, nothing. Why? Because I haven't enabled the content. Now, if I click on enable, okay, and view the macros, oh, still nothing. Record macro. So here, let me check the other one. I'll save. Same with the other one. It's asking to enable the content. Enable. Now, once you enable, we'll allow the file to download the dropper, right? Although I can't view the macros here, but we can view the macros the other way. So let's see how we can view the files. When we open the files, they look innocent, right? But when you click on enable the content, this will be a problem. So let me get back here. So in order to understand the behavior and unveil the hidden macros, so we will use a tool called vmonkey. So we have two files, taxes and definite logic. So vmonkey. The first one is definitely logic. Let's see. So vmonkey reveals the hidden macros in a Word file. Okay, let's go up, examine the results, parsing Visual Basic Code. So the Visual Basic Code here has been detected is this one: private sub define legit shell cmd, and downloads this application from this address, which is a sample application. It's not malicious, right? It's a sample. But the presence of such code in your Microsoft Word or your Word file makes the file malicious, right? Because it executes other commands in the background. So here it downloads the dropper from this address. If you go there, so this is one of the addresses that the file is trying to go to once you open it, or once we click on enable content. Now here are the recorded actions. So the first one is downloading the dropper. The second one is the same, downloading the dropper. At the end, it's saying VBA bulletins called shell. So that's how you notify, that's how you analyze or unveil the macros within a Word file. Now let's see the other one, taxes. The second one, it's trying to download note ac2c server.sh. It's trying to download the script, bash script from TryHackMe, which mimics the behavior of a malicious file trying to download a Trojan from the C2C server. And this is the same command here, present in Visual Basic. These are all happened in the background without you know. Once you click enable content, they will start to work. Okay.
So as most of you know, YARA is a file pattern matching with rules. It uses rules to match files and identify their behavior or label their behavior. In this video, we will be talking about and explaining YARA. By definition, YARA is a file pattern matching with rules. It can identify files based on binary representation, hexadecimal representation, or strings. So YARA uses rules. Okay, so you create rules. Okay, so you create a rule file with YARA. This rule file will identify and label target files based on strings, hex, or binary that are existed or developed with the file you are scanning. So for example, you could be scanning an executable file, all right, with YARA. So you create a rule file with YARA to scan the executable file for specific strings or specific hexadecimal opcodes or binaries or binary representations. Whatever you are trying to identify, you can use the rule file, all right, to scan and identify the behavior the classification of the file you're scanning. So in YARA, in order to use YARA, you have to create something called the rule file. All right. Now every rule file must contain rule name, okay, the rule name, the condition, okay, that if matched in the file you are scanning, the rule name will be considered as true, or it applies to the file you're scanning. The meta is a section in the rule file that the developer of the rule file can use to describe the objective of the file or the goal of this rule file. Strings are, you can define variables, all right? Or you can use strings to define variables to look for specific strings in the file you're scanning. For example, you could be looking for Bitcoin addresses, you could be looking for IP addresses, the common indicator of compromises. So if you have a specific set of indicator of compromises based on your threat hunting or information gathering, and you want to put these indicators of compromise in a specific rule file to scan against specific classifications of malwares, you can create strings inside the rule file so that when you apply the rule file on the malicious file or the file you are doubting that it is malicious, you can use the indicator of compromise you have gathered, the strings in the rule file, and apply them on the target file to see if it is malicious or not based on the indicators of compromise. It's worth mentioning that YARA is not an antivirus, right? So you may don't confuse YARA with antivirus. It's not an antivirus. It doesn't scan. It's not built with capabilities to scan for viruses or worms or malwares. It is just a file pattern matching, right? Remember this. It is a file pattern matching. So it labels malicious files or malwares based on patterns created within these files, such as strings, hexadecimal, or binaries. So how do you know where to get these strings from, or the hex, or the binaries? So technically, if you are a security analyst, or if you work in threat hunting, you would be gathering information about strings used in malwares, and then you could be creating a rule file, all right, that contains these strings. And then when you apply this rule file on sample files to scan if these sample files contain the indicators of compromise you have gathered, then you would safely assume that this file could be malicious, all right, because it has or it matches the indicators of compromise we have just gathered and you have which you put in the rule file. All right, that's about the definition, the use, and the rule, and how what's the syntax of the rule file, how to create a rule file. Okay, now the syntax. How do you, after you have created your rule file, right, you're ready now to use YARA to scan or to identify files. Syntax is you type YARA, the rule file that you created or you've chosen, and then the file you are scanning or trying to classify. Simple. Now, what if you don't have to create YARA rules? There are specific tools that you can use which contain many YARA rules to scan files. You can edit on them or you can add on them. So one example is Loki. So one of the tools that you can use instead of creating YARA rules is Loki. Of course, Loki contains many YARA rules, but of course there are some rules that are not exist. So you have to create or add them to the tool. That's why it's considered an open source tool. So Loki is a tool that detects indicators of compromise based on 4 methods: the file name, the YARA rule, hash check, and IP address. The IP address is actually, it compares the IP address with the rules in YARA to see if it matches one of the IP addresses belonging to command and control servers used for botnets. YARA gen is a tool that can be used to generate YARA rules for specific files. So assuming that, or let's assume that we have two files, all right? So we use Loki to scan these files for these indicators of compromise. And one file is found to be malicious and the other one is found to be not malicious. But you're sure that both files are malwares, but one of them has not been labeled as malicious by Loki. So how do you explain that? The explanation is simple. The indicators of compromise of the file don't exist in the YARA rules of the Loki. So basically you have to create YARA rule to match these indicators of compromise of the malware. So what do you do? You use the YARA generator. So you apply the YARA generator on the malware to extract indicators of compromise in a YARA rule. So you can use that rule in later detection attempts. Valhalla is a tool, or it can be not a tool actually, it's a tool and search engine. So you can search YARA rules online, see if you have missing YARA rules, see if you want to create a new rule based on hashes, based on keywords, based on IP addresses. It's a pretty great tool. We're gonna show that too later in the video. Okay, now let's examine an example YARA rule to demonstrate what we're talking about. So I'm gonna switch back here to my local machine. All right, so as you can see here, I have one example YARA rule file. So let's take a look at the file. So this is an example rule file. As you can see, this is the this is the name of the rule, hello checker. And as you can see here, we have strings. So the file will look for these strings. All right. The strings are hello world in uppercase, lowercase, uppercase, and regular. So the strings are here. And then we have the condition. The condition is any of them, which means that when you can any of them means that the rule file will check for all of these strings. All right. Now, if you want to check only for example, if you want to check only for the uppercase, you would, instead of any of them, you would use the variable name hello world uppercase. In this case, the behavior of the rule file has changed. It's not going to check for hello world. It's not going to check for the lowercase and the regular casing. It's going to only check for the uppercase. So if a file in your system does have hello world all uppercase, the rule file will match and YARA will be able to tell you that these files contain the hello world. That's an example. So I'm gonna switch this back to any of them. And let's see here. So how do we use this rule file on this file? So we have file one. File one, say we want to see if file one contains any of the strings described in the rule file. So what do? We type YARA. And then we put the rule file and the file we are scanning. So now the output of the command will differ based on the result. So if there is a match between the rule file and the file you're scanning, the rule file or the rule name will be displayed in the output. Enter. As you can see, this is the output. As you can see, this is the name of the rule, right, inside the rule file. And this is the file one, which means that the file one has matched the rule in your rule file. Okay, that's the basic use of YARA. But of course, you will be using YARA for malware analysis. Now we're going to switch to the virtual machine. Here, clear. And we'll be using Loki to scan for suspicious files. So we have a directory, ls here. So we have the directory called suspicious files. It contains files that are confirmed to be malicious, or let's say not confirmed. Let's say files you doubt as malicious. So you want to see if there are any indicators of compromise that can be extracted or can be matched on these files, so you can escalate that for further analysis. So what we would do, instead of going back and creating separate YARA rules, we will use an existing tool called Loki to scan these files. So we are in the directory of Loki, and here the syntax for Loki is such like this: Loki Python. We use sudo Python -b for the path of the suspicious files. So I'm gonna grab the path. So the path will be suspicious files. And I have two files, file 1 and file 2. We're going to scan the first one, which is file 1. The password. such file or directory. Okay, as you can see now, Loki is scanning the file. All right, so up to this point, as you can see, this is the file that's being scanned or has been matched. The first bytes, MD5, the hashes. As you can see, the reason one, YARA rule match, we have a match. The rule name is web shell metas lsoft, subscore 70, description web shell. So the YARA has identified, or Loki has identified, that the file we are scanning is labeled or classified as a web shell. Of course, how Loki has concluded that by looking at the rule name. This is the rule name that has been matched from the YARA rules. And these are the matches. This is the strings, as you can see, buff, and we have another one here. So the result is suspicious objects detected. Loki recommends a deeper analysis of suspicious objects. Okay. You can always go back to Loki directory and examine the rules or the YARA rules that Loki uses for analysis. So you can go to signature base, YARA, and here are all of the rules that this tool uses for analysis. You can examine them on your leisure and understand how they works. For example, I would suppose that there is a rule for examining metasploit payloads. So let me see if we can grab it. Grep metasploit. Okay, as you can see, there is a YARA rule to examine metasploit payloads. Let's take a look at the rules. So as you can see here, we start with the meta, and here's the meta description, metasploit payloads. And as you can see, next we have the strings. So the first rule name is MSF payloads MSF, and it looks for this string export BOF equal double backslashes. If this string exists, it's gonna trigger the rule, and this is the condition. Of course, there are many operators while using the condition in YARA. Most of them, one of them is AND, which means that both conditions must match in order to trigger the rule, or all of them. Here you can see we have OR, we have AND. The next one is, as you can see, looks for these strings in the file and the condition, all of them. So this rule, similar to the one we have created in the firstly in the video, but here it's gonna trigger only if the file or the subject file contains all of these strings. Okay, simple, right? That's how it works. Now we will scan file 2. So the result is system seems to be clean. Okay, based on the analysis. File 2. No. Okay. Oh, directory. All right. One index.php. You can see the file is considered, or the file is web shell, right? But Loki was not able to flag it as such. So this means that the YARA rules in the tool now, ironically, as you can see, the file is a web shell, but the tool, Loki, was not able to flag it as web shell or malicious, which means that the YARA rule, there is no YARA rule to flag this file. We need to create a separate YARA rule to flag this file. So we will be using YARA generator to generate a rule for this file. So how do we do that? Let's see the back. So there is YARA gen here. Now the syntax for generating a YARA rule with this tool is like this. So Python 3, tool name, and then -m. We specify the path to the files which we would like to generate rules for. Suspicious files, file2, and then we put the output where we would like the rule to be placed after it is generated. So again, we will choose or the same path, right? Let's do it like this, the same path. Okay, so the rule file is created. Now let's go examining the file. So cd to suspicious files. Okay, so where it is, this is the rule file. Let's examine the rule file now. All right. So this rule file has been created by the tool exactly to match the indicators of compromise in the malicious files that Loki was not able to flag. As you can see, these are the strings used, the conditions. All right. Before adding the rule to an existing open source tool like Loki, we have to test it. Okay, so how do we test this? We type YARA and the rule file name, which is file2.yar, and then we type the file name that we would like to test. So previously we tested file2 with Loki, and Loki failed to flag this file as malicious. Now, given that we have created a rule, a separate rule for this file, our rule now, or our YARA rule file, should succeed in identifying this file, or should succeed in matching the file to one of its rules. So file2, as you can see, it matched. This is the rule name, and this is the file. Great. Now let's add the rule to Loki and scan the file one more time to see if Loki will be able to flag it. So we will rename the file to mv file2.yr to something like, let's examine the file one more time, nano file2.yr. So we need to give it a descriptive name. Let's take a look at the actual file. So the file name is b374k. Let's rename it as is. So mv file2.yr .yar. Okay, let's copy that now. Let's see first where is the directory of Loki. So it's in tools. All right. So cp suspicious files, and copy the root file into tools, Loki, signature base, YARA, and copy it with the same name. Okay, let's examine now ls-la. See if the file has been created. Grep b3. All right, so as you can see, we have been able to move or add the rule file to Loki. So let's now use Loki one more time to scan for file 2, or the directory file 2 that contains the file that has been able to skip our test or to slip away. So basically we will cd to tools and then loki.py. -p. So the path will be suspicious files file 2. Okay, so file 2 contains, or this directory that contains the file we would like to scan. So now hit enter and see if Loki will be able to scan it to flag it. There is no P here. And we forgot to Python. So, as you can see, the results now are different. Loki has changed its mind and decided to flag it as suspicious. The rule name, or the YARA rule, is home cm-natic suspicious files file 2 index, which we created actually. And here is the type of pub shell.
In today's video, we're going to resume talking about malware analysis. If you remember, in a previous video, we talked about static malware analysis. In today's video, we're going to go over a brief on dynamic malware analysis. So to start with, we're going to work on 4 items: definition, considerations, purpose, and tools of dynamic malware analysis. Okay, so to start with, what is dynamic malware analysis? Let's provide some definition before we start working on other stuff. So the definition here, it can be defined: dynamic malware analysis is characterized by opening the file or opening the binary in a sandbox environment, or in, let me say, a dedicated environment. So say you have a sample such as payload. Let's say it's an executable sample. So in order to dynamically analyze this sample, you would go ahead and open it. So before doing any sort of analysis using dynamic malware analysis tools, we first open the file. Now, the most important thing is when we open the file, we don't open the file in a live environment. We're going to talk about this in the considerations. But for now, dynamic analysis can be defined as opening the file, opening the binary in a controlled environment. In static analysis, we actually saw that the main highlight in that kind of analysis, which is a static analysis, is that we do not open the file. We do not open the binary. Here we open it in order to observe its behavior. So when opening the binary, we give it the go-ahead to do what it was intended to do, right? So based on that premise, we will be able to monitor and extract all of the artifacts related to its behavior. So that can be called the definition of dynamic malware analysis. Okay, so now we open the binary. So what do you mean by a controlled environment? So a controlled environment can be any operating system you dedicate for malware analysis. For example, you can build your own VM. Okay, in this VM, it can be Windows, WinVM, it can be Windows VM, and it can be Linux VM. Now you can build your own dedicated environment, all right, and install all of the required tools. But there are other tools you can use online, unless you want to develop a machine for the long-term use, or if you want to develop your own machine and release it to the community. That's a different story. But that is what we mean when we say a controlled environment. Okay, now let's talk about the considerations before embarking on analyzing malware samples using dynamic analysis. So the first consideration we would talk about is, as I said earlier, it's the controlled environment. So we create or use a controlled environment dedicated for malware analysis. Okay, the reason behind using a controlled environment is that if you open the sample using a live environment, such as the machine you're using, your own machine, the endpoint you're using in your corporate, the malware will not do good, right? It will damage the network, it will steal the files, it will do what it was intended to do. So that's why we open the file in a sandbox environment. So a controlled environment can be called sandbox. So that is the sandbox, a controlled environment. Okay, now that's the first consideration. The next consideration after we create a controlled environment is that we take a snapshot of this environment. Okay, so we take snapshot. Of course, the snapshot is taken before you analyze the file. So before, I'm gonna type before, like that, before analyzing or opening the sample. So why is that? The reason is that some samples are classified under ransomware. So ransomware is a family of malicious software that is designed to encrypt the whole files, encrypt your files, or even the whole operating system, and demand a ransom in order to decrypt your files or restore back your operating system. That is why you take a snapshot. So in case you encountered a ransomware in your analysis, so basically you will be able to restore back to a clean slate, or to state 0, I'm going to call it. So basically you can restore back to state 0 where you first installed or created your virtual machine. These are the most important considerations when dynamically analyzing malware. Okay, I feel the need to write this separately or individually is that don't, okay, open the sample on a live machine. A live machine is the machine that you are using for your work, for your own purpose, for gaming, production, whatsoever. Don't open it on a live machine. no matter the damage associated with the binary. The malware can be less damaging. So it doesn't need to be malware. It doesn't need to be any sort of Trojan or ransomware. It can be just a small virus that would make your computer slow. But who wants this? If you want to analyze it, just do it in a controlled environment. If you don't want to analyze it, we're going to talk about online tools which you can use to determine an idea or determine what would the malware do. Okay, so what's the purpose of dynamic malware analysis? Now we talk about the purpose. So why aren't we good with only static analysis? The reason is that some malware authors or developers use something called let me remove this one. Use something called packing. Okay, so we have the idea of packing, or we call it sometimes the obfuscation. So this technique is used by malware developers to obfuscate and encrypt the contents of the malware. Okay, so if the contents of the malware is encrypted, you can no longer benefit from static analysis, since most of the strings or the output of the static analysis tools will be giving you obfuscated content. So if you run strings, for example, if you run strings on an obfuscated payload, say obfuscated.exe, okay, so the output of strings will be something that you can't understand, encrypted. So you won't be able to see the imports, the functions, the API calls, IOCs. That's why we resort, one of the reasons, of course, we resort to dynamic analysis. We want to see what the malware does in real time. That's one reason why we resort to dynamic malware analysis. Now, other reasons can be related to disclosing the full behavior of the malware. So in static analysis, yeah, I know we can see the hash, I know we can research online, I know we can extract the API calls, understand what kind of DLLs are called by the malware, but this doesn't reveal the actual behavior of the malware. It only gives you 20%, 30% of what the malware does. Now, sometimes we can be good with only static, of course, with the aid of online tools or with the aid of security solutions. But if you want to completely analyze the malware, you would resort to dynamic analysis. So you would combine the results of static and dynamic. Unless you are reverse engineering the malware, that's a different story. Okay, so beside the reasons I just outlined, the purpose of dynamic analyzing malware, first to extract the network connections. So we want to see what are the calls the malware makes when it is launched. The calls can be to domain names, to IP addresses, to host, whatever. So we want to see what are these calls. So when we are able to see these calls, when we are able to see the domains the malware is trying to connect to, we can draw a picture of what kind of sample we are dealing with. The next thing we want to see is the processes. So what are the processes launched by the malware when it is opened on our environment, right? The third purpose is that we want to reveal actually the registry keys that are modified by this sample. And this one is actually related to Windows. So this is only for Windows. In Windows, the registry component or the registry actually is a big part of Windows. So modifying a registry would impact the environment, would impact how Windows works. That's why we want to see what are the registry keys queried, modified, or created by the malware or the sample. It might be a malware, right? So network connections, processes, registry, keys. And of course, we want to see, lastly, the startups. Oftentimes, malware samples would create entries in the startups so that when the computer boots up or when you first start your computer, the malware will inline start with your PC and start to work. So basically, we want to see what are the startup entries created by the malware. Okay, so now we know the definition, considerations, and purpose of dynamic malware analysis. Let's now talk about some of the tools used for dynamic malware analysis. Okay, so tools of dynamic malware analysis. What are some of the tools? Now, as we said earlier, guys, the first thing is that we need a sandbox. So sandbox can be of your own creation, your own VM, or can be an online service. What are some of the online sandboxes? Some of the online sandboxes are Kuko Sandbox. So Kuko, here it is C, not K. Let me correct this one. Kuko Sandbox. Now, Kuko Sandbox can be installed locally as a VM, or it is provided as an online service as well. You don't need to install anything. Now, the next thing, or the next online sandbox that you can use is actually called the Cape Sandbox. Again, Cape Sandbox can be installed locally, okay, or online. These are very supported sandboxes, and it has huge community support. Now, other online tools can be, for example, we have, as you know, AnyRun. So AnyRun is an online tool that you can use to analyze your sample. You can submit the hash or upload the sample, and AnyRun will do the analysis. Also, we have hybrid analysis. Hybrid analysis is a service through which you can submit a hash or a file, uploading a file to be able to reveal its, it will give you a report. In this report or throughout this report, you can take a look at the behavior of the malware. These are online and offline sandboxes. Now let's talk about some of the tools that you can use on your own, okay, in your own machine if you want to analyze it locally. So say you don't want to use any of these services, you want to build your own your offline sandbox. So what are some of the tools that you would need to install? So let's talk about some of the tools, and let me draw a row here like that. If you want to use your own VM, what are some of the tools? So the first thing is that we have Process Monitor. As the name suggests, this tool will aid you in displaying all of the processes, the registry keys, and the network connections used by the sample you are analyzing. Also, we have Process Hacker. Now, Process Hacker can be called as an advanced version of the Task Manager. It will display all of the active processes, the related API calls, memory sections. You can fully analyze a process using Process Hacker. So that's one. Also, we have Autoruns. Autoruns is a very popular tool. It also displays the processes, the startups, entries created by the sample, and the memory sections as well. Recommended tool. So Process Monitor, Hacker, Autoruns, and of course, don't forget Process. So something like that. This one can be considered as a static analysis tool, but also it provides the ability to use graphs that will depict the malware behavior. Again, we have Wireshark. Although Wireshark is used for analyzing networks or as a network analyzer, you can use Wireshark. Once you open the file or the sample, you can open Wireshark after that to be able to see the network connections that are made by the sample. So Wireshark is a great tool if you want to analyze the network activity of the malware. Also, you have TCP dump. Okay, now these are the dynamic analysis tools. Now let's move to some sort of practical scenario. We will take a look at a report curated by hybrid analysis. So there is a sample submitted to hybrid analysis. We're going to talk about the sample, and we will walk you through the report curated by this online sandbox. So let's say you have this hash. I'm going to click on search, and when you click on search, hybrid analysis will run a quick search on its database. If people have submitted a sample, this sample before, it will give you the number of times and the list of reports that are created when people before you have submitted the sample. So as you can see, they are ordered, descending using the dates. So let's take a look at this one. This one is actually a red line. The file name is red line. Let's take a look at that. Now, when we first open the report has many sections, as you can see. It's very important to understand what you want out of this report, not to be overwhelmed by the wealth of information you see here. So the first thing, we have the risk assessment section. Here we see information related to the damage of the malware, the impact of the damage or the scope of the damage, the classification of the file. So basically, as you can see here under network behavior, we see that the malware contacts 8 domains and 8 hosts. Fingerprints, persistence. These sections are actually categorized as risk assessment sections. Here we can see the map to MITRE, ATT, and CK. So if you remember, MITRE, ATT, and CK is a framework that you can use to research adversary techniques. So basically, if you want to match the behavior of the malware to those outlined in the MITRE entity and CK, you can use this section. Let's take a look at this. View all details. And we can see all of the techniques used by the malware. As you can see, execution, it uses privilege escalation. It also evade defensive techniques. If you go down, it also has perform credential access, discovery. So along with every adversary technique, you would see those that match the malware behavior. Okay. Now we scroll down, we see these are the malicious indicators. Now using these indicators, the sandbox deduced that the sample is malware. He would give you the reasons why this sample is considered as malware. For example, as you can see here, let's see this one. Installation persistence. Allocates virtual memory in remote process, writes data to a remote process. These are some of the indicators that the sample is malware. Okay, if you scroll down, we see here the details of the file, like the hash, the architecture it was designed to run on, and the size of the file. These are details that you can get out of static analysis. The sections of the file, again, we talked about these in the static analysis video. The imports, you can get them also from static analysis. Here are screenshots provided by the sandbox itself of outlining what happens when they open the file. As you can see, this is the CMD that has been spawned upon opening the file. And then as you can see, the file seems like a normal installer, installs some software. And that's it. As you can see, when the service tried to install the software, it encountered an error. So a normal person would think that this program doesn't work or isn't working. But in reality, what happened is that once the person proceeded with opening the file and installing the service, it actually installed the malware on the network without their knowledge. These are the processes created by the sample. You can get these if you are analyzing your malware locally. You can see these using Process Hacker or Process Monitor. Network analysis. These are the domains and hosts contacted by the malware. One hallmark of malwares is that they contact or they create outgoing calls to domains and hosts or IP addresses. Here is the HTTP traffic witnessed on the malware. So basically, sometimes malwares would communicate with their CNC server, right, using HTTP, maybe to post data that has been exfiltrated from the victim. So when the malware steals or spots data that it wants to steal, it can upload these data using HTTP to an offshore server. So the kata alerts, these are the signatures that are related to IDS. The strings, extracted strings, again, you would get these if you are analyzing the malware static, but again, if it was backed, you would need to do dynamic analysis, as I told you earlier. Extracted files, these are the files created by the sample. And these are, as you can see, the details about every file. And one good thing about this sandbox is that it gives you the AV scan result. So it performs some sort of antivirus scan, or it submits maybe the files that the malware creates to an online malware scanning service to be able to give you a label on every file that the malware created. These are the DLLs, and as you can see, they are clean. And here you will see community support. If people have comments about this malware, you would see what they have to say here in the community support or the community comments. We're going to launch Process Explorer, leave this running, as you can see here in the screen. So as you can see, this is the pane of the Process Explorer, and this is the lower pane. By the way, you can show the lower pane here by going to View and clicking on Show Lower Pane. We're going to talk about why this view is important. And after you launch Process Explorer, go ahead and launch the malware you want to analyze. For example, in today's video, this is the sample we are analyzing, 1.exe. You go ahead and open that. And then once you see the malware showing up in the process view here, you can start the analysis. There is a lag in the display here because of the network connection. So here, as you can see, I have the malware opening up, and I can see here all of the related information. For example, as you can see, the column here displays the PID of the process. In the description, as you can see, we see the description of the binary. Now, the description along with the company name give you an indication or an insight about who's the author of the malware, whether it's a company or individual, and the function of it. But it's not a definitive insight on the behavior of the file, because malware authors these days are very skillful in creating or masquerading normal binaries or their malware as system binaries. We're going to talk about this. Most of the techniques they use are process masquerading and process hollowing. We're going to talk about this in this video. So, description and company name give you insight about, again, we said the author of the binary and description of what it's supposed to do. All right, so we see the CPU usage, the private bytes. Now, what's important is we click on view and we show the lower pane. Since there's a lower pane here, as a malware analyst, you want to take a look at the handles of the specific binary you are analyzing. So you can see the handles here. Let's highlight one example. This is the malware. We can see the handles, we can see the DLLs, or we can see the threads. Okay, now handles, you can take a look at the files, the DLLs, registry keys, mutexes that the malware is consuming or using while it is running on disk or in memory. As you can see, we see directories, we see files, we see registry keys. All of these are called handles. Now, taking a look at these is of tremendous importance, because by analyzing what are the handles the binary is using, we can partially conclude what it's trying to do. Okay, as you can see, we have mutexes as well, mutants. Now, mutants are very useful if you want to control access to a shared resource between threads. And as you can see, we see threads and workstation names. DLLs. Now, DLLs are also important in the dynamic analysis, because you might want to grab one of these DLLs and analyze it separately. Like, you can upload it online and see the results, what the security solutions have to say about the specific DLLs, and you can see the threats. All right, so what's the methodology when we are dynamically analyzing an executable with Process Explorer? So the first thing we want to take a look at is we can right click and go to properties. In here, first we want to know who are the authors of this binary. So we go to image. First we see here the path where it is stored, okay, and the command line used to launch the binary, and we can see here the version and the build time. But with the Process Explorer, if the verify button is not grayed out, it means that the binary needs to be verified, whether it is official binary belongs to the operating system, in this case it is Microsoft, or it's developed and authored by someone else. So we can click on verify, and as you can see, it says no signature was present in the subject. It means that the file here isn't not verified to belong to a specific organization. So that's the first red flag about any file. There is no signature that gives you an indication or a clear name about who developed the binary. Now, sometimes, even though there are some malwares or some binaries, they have specific signature. Like, let's take a look at this one. So if you click on this specific the Windows log on application, we can see that it's verified. If you click on verify, as you can see, it's verified by Microsoft Windows, and it is defined as Windows log on application. While this is good indication that the file is not a malware, but advanced malware developers can use something called the process hollowing. So in process hollowing, what happens? We have a specific binary like this one. So what they do, they hijack the code of this specific Microsoft binary while it is running in memory. Okay, so this version of this official binary, this is the version running on disk, and it's verified as a Windows logon application. So when we take a look at this one from Process Explorer, we kind of relieved that this binary is official and belongs to Microsoft. But if malware authors chose this binary and apply some sort of process hollowing, you might still see the verified sign here on the file, but in fact in memory it is running as a malicious process. That's called process hollowing, manipulating the application code or the executable code while it is running in memory. You're not going to be able to uncover this on the version running on disk. This is the version running on disk. There's another version running on memory. We're going to detect how a binary can be hollowed in this video. So the first indication is the verification or the signature of the file. All right. As you can see here, we can have here data execution prevention status. So this is a useful feature that Microsoft developed in order to prevent from buffer overflow attacks. It's very useful if you see this enabled on a binary you are analyzing. It's also a green flag. All right, so let's take a look now at the TCP IP. Now, TCP IP here shows all of the active network connections. Again, we go back to what we said earlier in the video. We can launch process monitor and correlate what are the network connections shown here for this specific process with the output shown here in Process Explorer. So for example, when log on, we don't witness any active network connections. If we check on the binary itself here that we are intentionally analyzing, and we go to TCP IP, as you can see, we have one connection. So the first red flag, that it's not verified, and other red flag is that it has an active network connection to, and apparently an address that we don't recognize. So it is highly suspicious, right? All right. Now, if we go to the strings, into strings here, we can check all of the strings in the binary itself. And as you can see, we have image and we have memory. Now, the difference is the strings shown in the image here represent the strings of the executable file running on the disk, like this one. This is the version running on disk. Now, memory, the strings shown in memory represent the strings that are shown or stored in the binary that is running in the memory. Now, normally, the output of the strings should be the same in memory and on disk. If you see a difference, this is an indication, or this is another red flag that the file is malicious. Because when the strings are different between the version running in memory and the version running on disk, it might indicate process hollowing, okay, or process masquerading. So when the strings are different, this is another huge red flag. Beside the active network connections and this verification, the signature verification. All right, let's close that, and we go now to handles. So we click on handles. So first, as you can see, the DLLs. Again, we said that the DLLs can be analyzed by comparing them to a known version online or by uploading them to a service like VirusTotal. The files. Now the files here also give an indication about the behavior of the binary we're analyzing. As you can see, these are the files that the binary is trying to access. If you see something suspicious that the binary is not supposed to access, open, modify, or delete, then it is also another indication. Here we see the registry keys. Now, the registry keys that are getting accessed, modified, deleted, or opened by a specific binary should be related to the function of the binary itself. For example, I don't expect a binary like the, let's take an official binary here, a safe one. For example, the Google update. Let's take a look at the registry keys it's accessing. So you can see the current version. These are all normal registry keys, like it's normal they are being accessed. But what is not normal is that we see the binary itself accessing registry keys related to keystrokes or related to startup. Now, one single registry key that's being accessed is not an indication that a specific malware or a specific binary is malicious. You have to compare all of the registry keys and make sure that there is more than one registry key being accessed and it's a weird case. Let's go back to this one. Let's take a look at the registry keys. So we have, let's see, the current control set, the session manager. And we have, as you can see, it's accessing the internet settings. A binary like this one, you have to find out, if depending on the context, actually. This is a demo scenario. But depending on the context, you should be able to discern whether a malware or the binary is supposed to access such settings on the registry, like internet settings. The Explorer, as you can see, it's accessing the Internet Explorer as well, the feature control. Let's scroll down, see other registry keys. It's accessing the security settings of Internet Explorer. Again, scrolling down. Yeah, so as you can see, there is a heavy internet activity of this malware. So you have to ask yourself whether this binary is supposed to have internet access or is supposed to manipulate that much registry keys related to internet access. All right, so again, the same with the files. Now mutants, we can talk about mutants later, but it's like kind of advanced. It's related to shared resources on the memory. It's very useful if we talk about this in a memory forensic video. DLLs, again, we talked about DLLs that you can analyze them online, but you can just, what you can do, for example, this application is accessing a crypto DLL, bcrypt, crypt. Too many crypt or too many cryptic or too many crypto DLLs might indicate that this is a ransomware. Might. You have to, again, correlate the results. one output from a specific column here, like the DLLs, or a specific aspect of your analysis, isn't enough to conclude the behavior of the binary. You have to correlate all of the results. Again, if we right-click here, as you can see, we can submit this to VirusTotal. Now, submitting a binary to VirusTotal is part of the static analysis, but you can also use it as a tool in your arsenal while you dynamically analyze a specific malware. Back to properties. All right, so we talked about the signature, we talked about the network connections, we talked about the strings. Now, again, let's talk about the performance. So here it's giving you an insight, numbers about the consumption of resources, okay, being done by this specific executable. When you have high resource usage, like let's take an example. If we have high resource usage like the CPU or the physical memory, it might indicate that this file is doing some activity that requires these resources, like crypto mining. Crypto mining, if a specific computer is infected with a crypto miner, when analyzing the crypto miner, you will see huge CPU activity here, or the physical memory, because crypto miner rely heavily on CPU power. So the numbers here also give you an indication. And above all, the name of the file itself, right? Yeah, I don't recommend using the name as an indication on the nature of the file, because as I said earlier, malware developers or authors can hide a malware inside like a Windows executable, like this one. This is called process masquerading. If they're able to hide the signature of it, this is called process hollowing. Alright, so before we start talking about advanced static analysis and dynamic analysis, let's do a recap on basic static analysis, or what we have covered up until this moment. So we covered basic static analysis. We covered what are the things, or what are the items that we look to collect when upon handling or analyzing an executable file or just a binary. Basically, we look to extract strings, we analyze the portable executable header. This is especially true when handling or analyzing Windows executable files. Indicators of compromise, IP addresses, hashes, DNS names. This is especially connected to strings. You may find these items when extracting strings. Architecture and header, whether the file is 32-bit or 64-bit, and header information that verifies its nature. So why do we verify the header, or we look at the header? Because we want to look for the signature. The signature verifies the nature of the file. If the file's extension is exe, after looking at the signature of the file, we can verify that it's indeed an executable file. Sometimes a file could be coming as, or the extension of the file could be PNG, and when looking, or upon looking at the signature, we see that it is executable. So it's very important to look at the header. And lastly, we can supplement the findings of the basic static analysis with online scanners, such as VirusTotal. Now, what are the basic static analysis tools? We have the PS3. This works for Windows. PEcheck, this is also for Windows, to analyze the portable executable header. The Process Doctor, and we have XX hex editor to examine the hex, or to examine the file in hex view. And lastly, we have Detected Easy, which tells us whether the executable file or whether the binary is packed. Now, packing is a tactic malware analysts use to hide or obfuscate the code of the malware. So basically, we use Detected Easy to tell whether the executable was packed or not. Okay, now having concluded basic static analysis, now let's start with advanced static analysis and then on to dynamic analysis. So what do we look for when we do static or advanced static analysis? So basically, advanced static analysis is digging deep into the binary. In other words, you might call it reverse engineering. So what do we look for here? Again, we look for strings, we look for API calls. So API calls are a collection of functions and services that Windows operating system provides in order for developers to create applications. So basically, API calls are very necessary for applications and programs to work. So during static analysis or reverse engineering, we look to extract API calls, because extracting the API calls will definitely tell us the what the malware does, or what the binary does, as well as an insight on its behavior. The function calls, what are the functions that the malware or the binary calls? Execution flow, and the DLLs and the exports. Basically, when you analyze the binary using disassembler or a debugger, we can basically extract all of these bits of data. Strings, API calls, function calls, all of these can be extracted using a good disassembler. What are some of the tools that can we use? We have Ghidra, which is the subject of this course. We have Radar 2. Radar 2 can work on Linux as well. IDEA Pro works on Windows, and only debug can be found on Linux and Windows. All of these can be considered as reverse engineering tools. They can be used to disassemble, decompile, and debug a binary. Now, what is the difference basically between a disassembler? I'm going just to write the abbreviation, disassembler, and we have decompiler. And lastly we have a debugger. So what's the difference between these? A program can act as a disassembler, decompiler, and debugger at the same time. Ghidra is one of these programs. That's why we're going to use it throughout this course. So a disassembler is a program that converts the compiled binary into an assembly code, from compiled C into assembly. Oops. A decompiler is also a tool that decompile the compiled binary. Basically, it reveals the C code or the C++ code or the code itself. It could be written in another language. And lastly, the debugger allows us to extract errors and bugs in the program. Okay, so having now understand the methodology of advanced static analysis, let's now hop to a dynamic analysis. So in dynamic analysis, you know that the cornerstone of dynamic analysis is interacting with the file. So here we open the sample. Okay. Now that's very basic difference between dynamic analysis and static analysis. We open the sample and we interact with it. Before I hop to the methodology of dynamic analysis, let's talk about these. So these are common API calls that when we find them in a binary, when I find a binary, when a spot of binary performs these API calls, we pay a closer attention to it. These API calls mostly used by malware samples. Let's go over them one by one. So we have first one, get keyboard state. Gets the status of the keyboard. This is used by keyloggers. Now, I'm not saying these API calls exclusively used by malwares. Of course, now these API calls are there or developed by Windows in order for developers to create applications that function. But these API calls can also be used by malwares to facilitate their objective or their working. So basically, other one is URL download to file and internet open URL. These two APIs interact with the internet and retrieve a file. They are used basically by droppers and downloaders. FTP put file uploads a file into an FTP server, used basically by malwares that perform data exfiltration. Create process, also used by malwares, basically droppers. In order to install another malware, it needs to create a process for that new malware. Get process address and is debugger present. So get process address, we extract the memory location of an exported function. We talked earlier about exports and DLLs and why it's important to analyze them while during the advanced static analysis. Basically, when we look into exports and DLLs, we can see if this API call is used. If it is used, it means that the sample is trying to retrieve the memory address of one of the DLLs or exports. Why it might need to do that? Because it might want to hook or perform API hooking to that DLL. And lastly is debugger present. It verifies whether a process is running in a debugging mode. This is basically used by malwares that evade detection and VMs. Okay, now let's talk about dynamic analysis. So what do we look for when we open the malware and open the sample and interact with it? First, we look to examine the processes. When we open the sample, we need to find out what are the processes that are spawned when this sample is opened. Looking at the processes will enable us to find out what are the DLLs of this used by this process, what are the API calls used by this process, in addition to some other important information such as memory addresses and file locations. Network connections. We can verify whether the binary or the sample makes network connections. Opened created files. So here we see what are the files that are created as well as the directories that store these files. This is very important for droppers because droppers tend to download files from the internet and drop it in some other location. So here we examine the created files and the opened files as well. Registry keys modified and created. So some malwares modify existing registry keys such as the run once so that the malware starts when the system or when the user logs in. This is a mechanism to create persistence. And event logs. Although event logs are used normally for troubleshooting and performing blue team tasks, you can also use event logs to see the effects after running the malware. You can even find out the register keys, the open created files, network connections, some of them, by just examining the event logs. Of course, to examine the event logs, we have to be familiar with the event codes, because every event code represents a specific operation. All right, what are the tools to gather this information? We have Process Monitor, one of the most popular tools that works on Windows operating system. Event Viewer, to view the event logs. This is pre-installed on Windows. Netstat works on both Linux and Windows. And we have Wireshark, the popular packet analyzer. And also you can use CrowdStrike suite of tools to dynamically analyze the sample. All right, in the next section, we will look into the methodology of reverse engineering or advanced static analysis. We're going to use Ghidra, and we will demonstrate the various sections that constitute this program, as well as we will look into different samples, analyze the assembly code, and see the various sections that can we look at in order to extract these pieces of information. Now it's time to go over one of the most popular disassemblers in the world of malware analysis and reverse engineering. Let's double click on Ghidra and explore the various features before we start analyzing a sample program. Okay, so from here, we start a new project. We're gonna click on File and then New Project. From here, select Non-Shared Project. Next, name your project. We're gonna name it as Hello World. And then we're gonna click on Finish. As you can see, the project has been created. We're gonna drag and drop the file or the sample we would like to analyze. So it's Hello World. We're gonna drag and drop here. Here we can check the basic options. The format is portable executable, and other options seem fine. We're gonna click on OK. And now the program is being loaded into the disassembler. Okay, now we have this summary. Let's see here. So we're fine with that. We're gonna click on OK. Okay, so now we're gonna click on the tool chest. Click on this dragon that represents the code browser. And now we're asked whether if you want to analyze the sample. Of course, we would like to analyze the sample because this will fire all the add-ons and plugins that Ghidra is armed with. So when we trigger these plugins, Ghidra will analyze the file or the sample in a holistic fashion. So click on Yes. And from here, it's giving us the option to select what plugins to load. So we're fine with the current settings. Click on Analyze. Okay, so now let's go through the basic sections of Ghidra. So on the left here, or on the upper left, we have the program trees. This will list all of the basic sections of the code of the sample. So as with any portable executable sample, we have the headers, the text, the R data, and the other sections. You can find these sections typically in any portable executable. In some obfuscated samples, you might find these or the names of these sections not as we see now. So the important section we have here is the text section. Clicking on this will bring up the assembly code on the right. Even if you don't double click on the text section, the section on the in the middle here, it shows the assembly code. Okay, going back to the left pane, we have the simple tree. The simple tree shows all of the API calls and the functions the sample calls. For example, in the imports, we can see all of the API calls that the code performs. In addition to that, we can see the exports. In the exports, we can see all the API calls that the function or the program exports. And from here, we can see all the DLLs that it calls. We can see the code section that performs the call here. As you can see, it's highlighted in gray. Along with that, we can see the functions, and that's also a very important section to analyze because it contains the functions that are used in the code. Among these functions, we have the entry. Double clicking on the entry here, you can see local 8, local 14, and other functions because this entry function highlights the beginning of the program. As you can see here, we double click on that and we are in the same pane here because we are already in the beginning. Okay, and data file or data type manager. We can see various data types in the program, and on the middle here we can see the listing pane. The listing pane shows the assembly code. As you can see, guys, this is the assembly code. And if you have watched my previous video on assembly language, where I briefly explained all of the basic aspects you need to learn in order to start reading code in the assembly language, if you have watched that video, it's not going to be difficult for you to understand what's going on here. So as you can see, guys, we have various sections to go over here. So we start with the section on the left. These are the memory locations or the memory addresses of every instruction. And this is the opcode. Remember, the opcode represents the assembly instruction, right, but in the computer language. And it's a similar job here is to convert this opcode into a human readable instruction. So the opcode for call is this. This is an example. Here we can see the assembly instruction. In this case, it's call. Here it's pop. And on the right, we see the operand. The operand or the operands are the objects on which the function or which the instruction, the assembly instruction is being executed on. Okay, now on the right we can see a decompiler or the decompiler section. This is a section that shows the C code of the the C code of the sample. You can see whenever we click on an instruction, the C code changes. So here, if I scroll down and I click on this, you can see corresponding C representation of this assembly section in the program. Okay, now we're gonna click back to entry, and into entry here we can see, guys, the start of the code. And indeed, the start of the code, we can see a function call. It is void. It's the entry function. And there is a call to another function named security initialize cookie. You can also see this function here, security initialize cookie. Double click on this, we are redirected to the function itself. On the left, we have the assembly representation of the security initialize code that we double clicked on, and on the right, we can see we can see the decompiler or the C representation of this function. That's a basic overview. Now, one of the most important aspects of static malware analysis is to analyze strings. So to analyze strings, you can go to search, and from here you select strings. And here you define the criteria. Okay, so require null termination, and here the minimum length of the string. So click on search, or here the word model. Once you click on search, it brings up the strings. And from here you can start filtering. For example, let's say hello, and we can see the parts of the code that contain the word hello. That's for the strings. And one important aspect of Ghidra is the graph view. Now, to examine the graph view, which is another important feature in Ghidra, we have to go to functions, highlight the start of the code, entry, and then clicking on this icon, display function graph. As you can see, we see graph representation of the function, how it starts and how it moves through the various instructions. And from here also we can, in a graphic fashion, examine the control flow of the function, of the code. Okay, so now we're going to load up different samples where we can see different code logic and use of if, while, and for loops. For example, if we create a new project, and from here I'm gonna open the tool chest, and then going to open the if-else program. Request to analyze, no problem with that. And as with every case, we're gonna start looking for the main function. So on the left, clicking on functions, and from here we can see the M. So usually you can find the main function in three ways. You either locate the entry function, the start of the code, or you locate a folder or directory with the word M. So double clicking on that, we don't see the main function here. So rather we're gonna double click on this, and from here we're going to locate another directory that starts with _M. Double click on main, and here we can see the main function. So this highlights the main function. Here the code with the main function, and here a printf or statement that prints something out of the screen. The program demonstrates the if-else statement. We have another call to the printf or puts the sum is equal to 500 value. So we click on the main function, and on the assembly code here we can see the representation of this in assembly. So here we can see the instruction call and the name of the function. Here it's an operand. On the left we can see the memory address of the instruction, and following along with the code we can see here the call to print the statement. This program demonstrates if-else statement. You can double click on the puts and takes you so clicking on the puts, we can see the call to the puts instruction. And there is another put here. It shows the call to the put instruction, and we can see the actual value being printed to the screen. We can see it is done through the move instruction, and specified the word ptr will specify that we are printing a string, or the operand is a string. And here we can check the stack pointer that points to the corresponding variable. Same with this one. We can see the type of operand we're using when we want to use a string or to print out a string, right? So now let's take a look at the other program. From here, we're going to open a project and click on the while loop. Same drill, locate the main function. So here we cannot find in this directory, this one. Let's see here, and we have the main function. Same thing here, we have a call to the main function, and then something is the statement this program demonstrates while loop is printed out, and we have a for loop here in the C code, or we can see the actual representation here, as you can see, guys, with the for the while loop. So here, look at this jump if less than or equal instruction, and as you can see, guys, in the C code here, we can see the actual value is 5. So if the value of the counter, which happens to be local underscore 14, is less than 5, less than or equal to 5, it's actually here only less than. So less than 5. So basically what happens here, let's go back to the C code. We have a variable called local underscore 14 equals to 1. Okay, and the actual operation is represented by the assembly code. Here we have the instruction move that moves the value of 1 into the variable local underscore 14, represented by this format. And then we have the condition here where local underscore 14 should be less than 5. And then we have click on local underscore 14 where it increments the value of the counter through the add instruction, as can be seen here. So 1 is being added to the value of the counter defined. And then we have here after the, so let's go back to the condition. So the condition here compares. Look at this one. So here we have the compare instruction that makes sure that the value of 1 is less than 5 through this comparison instruction. Remember that comparison subtracts the source from the destination. Here the source is 4 and the destination is the value of the local 14. Based on the comparison instruction, we know if the result is true or false, right? Remember that the comparison instruction result is stored in the flags. We either have a 0 flag or we either have a carry flag. So if it is less than 5, then everything is okay. It's gonna use the put, it's gonna print this out. It's fun to learn at THM. So what happens here is that the value of local underscore 14, as long as it's under 5, through this instruction, it's going to, let's go up, to move or to perform this move instruction, which print out it's fun to learn at THM. Now, what happens when the value of 1 or the value of local underscore 14 is equal to 5 or is more than 4? Let's say it's more than 4, because the condition here, the for loop will continue working as long as the local underscore 14, the variable or the counter, is less than 5. So when the for loop breaks, we know that the local underscore 14 or the value of this counter is now more than 4, right? Because more than 4 meaning equals to 5 or greater than 5. So if we scroll down again, what controls that is this comparison here. This comparison is controlled by this jump less than. So we have this going up to this section. This section is the actual core or the core of the for loop, where the statement it's fun to learn THM is printed and an increment is made to the variable counter. So as long as the variable counter is less than 5, it's going to perform this jump. It's going to go back here where it's going to print it's fun to learn THM and it's going to increment. Now, as a result of the what's happened? Okay, as a result of the increments to the local underscore 14, it's going to come to a point where this variable is more than 4. So the result of this comparison is not 0. So when it comes to this, it's not going to perform the jump because the result of this comparison is not 0. When the result of the compare is not 0, it's not going to perform any condition comes after it. So it's going to execute this instruction move where it's going to print this out. That's the end of the while loop.